like using my pocket hole jig in a lot of my projects because it makes it really easy to assemble things. But I just recently had somebody ask, hey, how did you make that base and holder for your pocket hole jig? Well, let me show you a couple quick benefits of this and how easy it is to make. The pocket hole jig by itself is a great tool, but if you notice, it is a little on the narrow side. So whenever we're doing pocket holes on the ends of boards, it's fine. It's not going to be a problem. But every so often, I like to put holes on the sides of boards like this. And being that it is so narrow, if the wood is not perfectly centered, it's gonna, well, fall to the one side, make it a little bit more difficult to clamp and hold in position. Even when you have it clamped, a lot of times your wood will still force your pocket hole sideways, just making everything a little bit crazy. Early on, when I first got the pocket hole jig, to fix that problem, I just found another piece of wood that was real close in size and just used it as support on the ends. But every so often, I would use that piece of wood for a project, and now I'm searching for another piece of wood to make that work, and it just became a hassle. Now, to solve some of these problems, I've seen some people attach their pocket hole jig straight to their workbench. Well, that can work if you have a lot of space to work with. I don't. I'm in a small shop, and every bit of workspace I can have available to work on is valuable. So if I was to attach this here, that would take up a ton of my workbench. So that is not an option. So making a stand like this actually solved two problems. First off, I can attach my pocket hole jig, have a stable platform wherever I need it, and allow me to have a surface to rest things on as well. But there's actually an additional benefit. Let me show you. If you purchase a full pocket hole kit, usually it comes with a bunch of accessories and drill bits and extra little pieces that you need for it. Now, this right here can be easily lost, especially if you just throw these into a drawer. So I bought one of these little plastic organizers for $1 or $2 at the local store, and I just started notching out sections so that I could easily throw everything in. This will allow you to keep everything nearby your pocket hole and really easy to find. And as you can see here, I've made my base wide enough and added some Velcro strips so I can take that organizer and have all my parts right there nearby anytime I need it. And they don't fall off easily. So, now that you know the benefits of this, let me show you how easy this was to make. For the base, I wanted something that was real thick and real strong. That way if I put it on an uneven surface, say like that, you'll notice the base still stays nice and flat, making everything easy to drill. So on top of that, this thickness will allow me to add some screws all the way into it and hold everything nice and sturdy. For the width of the base, this just actually happened to be some scrap plywood. And if I measure it out, it's about 19 1/4. It was just a random piece I had left over. So you just want a board that's decently wide. It doesn't have to be exactly that size, but something that'll give you a nice, good bit of width on each side so that your wood is stable as you're trying to drill those holes. For the front to back width of your base, you want to take your pocket hole jig and you want to cut the wood or the base right to about the same size. It does not have to be perfect, but you do want it to be pretty close. Having it to about the same size will reduce any excess weight, any excess wood that might be in the way, and it'll allow you to get your jig right up to the edge of your workbench if you need it. Now please keep in mind there are a ton of different pocket hole jigs out there. This just happens to be a model made by Craig, but there are a ton of different brands making these. Different designs, different lengths, widths. So any kind of measurements I give you for the base, just keep in mind you'll probably have to do some adjustments if you don't have this exact one. Once you have the base cut out, it's now time to take your pocket hole jig and you want to place it right dead center. That way you have a maximum amount of room on each side to place your wood and everything should be nice and stable. For this particular jig, it has 4 holes that I can attach screws through into the base. And I recommend putting a screw into each of those so you know it's nice and rigid to the base and won't move around. But keep in mind that this particular one is made out of plastic, so you want the screws to be tight, but don't over tighten them. For this particular setup, I'm using some 1 1/4" screws. That's because I have a really thick base and the height on the jig is high as well, so it fits in there nicely. If your wood for your base is any thinner or your jig is thinner, you'll probably have to use some shorter screws. And once you have that screwed in place, it's a good idea to flip up the base and feel the bottom, just to make sure those screws are not protruding through there. If they are, that could easily mess up whatever surface you could be working on. So it's a good idea to either sand down or grind down those so they won't be a problem. Next up, we want to work on our little side pieces, our little wings off the side of our jig. Now these are a little critical because we want to make sure that the thickness of these are the exact thickness of your jig that you're using. Because if they're offset, that could throw your wood and everything would look bad as you're trying to drill and attach things together. So make sure that these right here are going to be the same exact thickness. Once you have your little side wings cut to the perfect thickness, you need to attach them to your base. Now to do that, you can either use glue, which is what I did. In those cases, you'll have to clamp it down and just give it some time to dry. Or you can go underneath and add some screws. Again, if you add screws, make sure there's a bunch of clearance under here and it won't scratch any surfaces you might be working on. Also, while you're attaching these, it's a good idea to take a straight edge and to put across them, because you want to make sure that both of your wings are straight across as possible, and that'll allow everything in the future to sit nice and steady. For the Velcro to attach the organizer, I just went out and bought some hook and loop cable ties that are inexpensive. I then took 3 of them and I cut the hooks off of these and glued them onto the organizer, and cut the loops off and glued those onto the wood. And if you look close, you'll notice that the pieces on the wood and the pieces on the organizer are in opposite directions. That way, when I flip this over and attach them together, just about anywhere I can attach it, it's going to stay in position. That's because we have Velcro touching all over. Now once you have your jig attached to your base, it's time to get it up and off your work surface. In a lot of cases, we'd probably just put it on a shelf, but we don't want to do that either because that's just going to take up storage space. How about we store this on the wall? Let me show you how. Now in my workshop, I like to use French cleats. So on the back of my base, I actually attached a French cleat so that I could easily hang this on the wall. But if you don't like that option or just don't want to use French cleats, let me show you another option. Now you could always just add some holes to your board. Now I'd recommend doing it on the opposite side of your holder here so that you have plenty of surface area, because you want these holes to be kind of towards the middle and away from the sides so that there's still plenty of strength in your base. But by making these holes, particularly on 2 sides, you can now use hooks or nails or whatever you'd like to hang these on your wall. Now that you know the benefits of this setup and how easy it is to make, let me actually tell you a couple negatives I've discovered. Now if you plan on using a French cleat on the back like I did, you'll notice just about any time I set it down on my surface, I now have an angle, a little gap under there. In these cases, I've learned that I'm just going to have to roll it or push it to the outside of my workbench here, and it'll actually give me a little extra benefit holding it still, but that is one drawback. And a second drawback to this setup is since I use plywood, there's always a chance it can warp. And I'm not sure if you could tell, but if you look right down here, there's a little gap in between the base and the actual surface it's sitting on. But just to show you exactly how warped this is, take a straight edge, we'll set it right here on these wings, and look at that. That's pretty drastic side to side. So in the near future, I'm gonna have to rebuild this setup just so that I can get rid of that warp, but I'm still doing okay for what I use it for now. With that thought, these 2 side wings, since they were glued down to this base, are going to have to be completely redone. If you were just to have screwed these down to this base, then you could always remove these, put them on a new base, and everything is really easy to assemble. So keep that in mind. Overall, I highly recommend building a space for your pocket hole jig. It makes it a lot easier to use, a lot easier to store away, and, well, in my case, a lot easier to find so I don't lose it. Now, if you can think of any other options that make this even better, please put those in the comments. I'd love to hear about it, and you'll help out a ton of other people. Otherwise, get out in your shop and have fun building.